Rome, 63 BC. One man stood in the Senate and talked for so long that he literally ran out of daylight and still lost. This is the story of Marcus Porcius Cato. Most people who've heard of Julius Caesar know the broad strokes: the conquest of Gaul, the crossing of the Rubicon, the assassination on the Ides of March. But fewer people know about the man who saw Caesar coming from a mile away, who dedicated the better part of his life to stopping him, and who failed, spectacularly, dramatically, and twice, in ways that tell us more about the death of the Roman Republic than almost anything else. His name was Marcus Porcius Cato the Younger, great-grandson of the legendary Cato the Elder, and he was, depending on your perspective, either the last great defender of Republican Rome or the most stubborn, inflexible politician in the ancient world. Possibly both. The Senate in the late Roman Republic was not a democracy in any modern sense. It was a chamber of aristocratic power, populated by men who jealously guarded their privileges, their traditions, and their carefully maintained balance of influence. The unspoken rule was this: no single man could grow too powerful. When Julius Caesar began his rise, first through lavish public spending that bought him enormous popularity, then through military alliances with the wealthy Crassus and the powerful Pompey, Cato recognized the threat immediately. He understood that Caesar wasn't just ambitious. Caesar was systematically dismantling the very mechanisms that kept any one man from seizing total control. And so Cato made it his personal mission to stop him, using the only weapons a senator had: procedure, persuasion, and an almost superhuman stubbornness. The year 63 BC brought the first real confrontation. A conspiracy had been uncovered. The Catilinarian conspiracy, led by the disgraced nobleman Lucius Sergius Catilina, who had plotted to overthrow the Republic through assassination and armed revolt. The consul Cicero had exposed the plot, and several conspirators sat in Roman custody awaiting their fate. The question before the Senate was simple and brutal: execute them without trial or follow the law. Julius Caesar, then serving as a praetor, stood up and delivered a remarkably measured speech arguing against execution. He proposed imprisonment instead. It was a politically calculated move. Caesar had his own murky connections to radical populist politics, and showing mercy to the conspirators served his image. The Senate was swaying toward his position when Cato rose to respond. What followed was a performance of pure rhetorical fury. Cato tore Caesar's argument apart, accused him of sympathizing with traitors, and demanded death. He spoke with such moral authority, such absolute conviction, that the Senate reversed course entirely. The conspirators were executed that same evening. Cato had won. But here is where things get interesting. During Caesar's speech, a small note had been passed to him on the Senate floor. Cato, suspicious of everything Caesar did, demanded the note be read aloud, convinced it was evidence of conspiracy. Caesar handed it over without hesitation. It was a love letter from Servilia, Cato's own half-sister. The Senate erupted in laughter. Caesar had humiliated Cato without saying a single word. Cato called him a drunk and stormed off. But the damage was done. He had exposed his own family's intimate business in front of Rome's most powerful men. It was a small wound, but it festered. From that moment forward, their rivalry was not just political, it was personal. The second failure came more than a decade later, and it was far more consequential. By 49 BC, Caesar had spent 9 years conquering Gaul, 9 years of brutal, brilliant warfare that made him fabulously wealthy, gave him a battle-hardened army of loyal veterans, and turned him into the most famous man in the Roman world. Cato had spent those same years in the Senate, fighting Caesar politically at every turn, blocking honors, challenging legislation, maneuvering against his allies. And for a time, it worked. Caesar remained technically outside Roman territory, his power leashed by the boundaries of his military command. Then came the ultimatum. The Senate, pushed heavily by Cato and his allies, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. They knew what this meant. Without his army and without legal immunity from his military command, Caesar would be immediately prosecuted by his enemies. It was a political death sentence designed to look like procedure. On January the 10th, 49 BC, Caesar stood at the bank of the Rubicon River, a small, unremarkable waterway that served as the legal boundary between his province and Italy proper. Crossing it with an army was an act of war against the Republic. Every man in Rome knew it. Caesar knew it. He crossed anyway. The Senate panicked. Pompey, who had been designated to lead the Republican forces, fled south. Cato fled to the provinces to raise troops. The war that followed tore the Roman world in half, and battle by battle, Caesar won it. Pompey was assassinated in Egypt in 48 BC. One by one, the Republican strongholds fell. By 46 BC, Cato found himself in Utica, in North Africa, commanding the last significant Republican force, watching the final army that could stop Caesar collapse at the Battle of Thapsus. The cause was lost. He knew it with complete, terrible clarity. What Cato did next has been debated, celebrated, and mourned for 2,000 years. On the night of April 46 BC in the city of Utica, Cato read Plato's Phaedo, a philosophical dialogue about the immortality of the soul, and then he took his own life. He was 49 years old. The accounts describe a man who went calmly, deliberately, on his own terms, refusing to live in a Rome ruled by Julius Caesar. When Caesar heard the news, he reportedly said that he grudged Cato his death because Caesar had wanted the satisfaction of pardoning him. That sentence tells you everything. Caesar understood that Cato alive and pardoned would have been a neutralized symbol. Cato dead by his own hand was something far more dangerous, a martyr. And that is precisely what he became. Within years of his death, Cicero wrote a pamphlet celebrating Cato's life. Caesar felt compelled to write a response attacking him, which only amplified Cato's legend further. Brutus, the man who would drive a knife into Caesar 2 years later on the Ides of March 44 BC, was married to Cato's daughter, Portia. The spirit of Cato's resistance did not die in Utica. It walked into the Senate on March 15, 44 BC, armed with a blade. Now here is what makes this story matter beyond ancient history. Cato was not a perfect man. He was rigid. He was sometimes cruel. He owned enslaved people, and his stubbornness arguably made compromise impossible and hastened the very catastrophe he was trying to prevent. But he understood something that is genuinely timeless, that institutions designed to distribute power are fragile, that they depend on people willing to use them even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unpopular, even when it appears to be a losing battle. He lost twice to Caesar, spectacularly, completely, and yet Caesar never fully escaped his shadow. The question Cato kept asking, who watches the powerful when the powerful write the rules, is not a question that has an expiration date. If this story made you think differently about Rome, about power, or about the people history half forgets, consider subscribing. There are hundreds of stories like this one, sitting just beneath the surface of what you already know, and we are just getting started.